G'day. Today, I'd like to talk to you about a group in our society who's not very popular. They're at best ignored, sometimes vilified, quite often even actively persecuted. Now, they work the night shift, working long hours, doing this really critical job that no one really acknowledges. When they're not at work, they do what we do. They catch up with friends, they socialise, they relax. In fact, all they're trying to do is make their way in the increasingly crowded and complex modern world, just the same as all of us. You may ask then why they're unpopular. Well, there's talk that they're just not like us. They stay all together, they don't try and assimilate into the community. They've got different habits. They don't even speak English, so we can't understand them. There's even some people who mutter darkly that they're not real Australians, they don't belong here. Of course, I'm talking about flying foxes, or fruit bats as they're often called. Although, it has to be said that our flying foxes often are refugees. They're often fleeing from persecution and violence, often after their homes have been destroyed, and that can lead them to set up homes in some rather odd places, like down the road here in Commonwealth Park. The flying foxes we see around here are grey-headed flying foxes, like this. They are true blue dinky-die Australians. They live just on a strip down the east coast from around about Bundaberg in Queensland down past Melbourne. Unfortunately for them, that's exactly where we want to live. And that brings them into conflict with humans. And that conflict has resulted in them having declining numbers, so much so that they're now listed as a threatened species. Bats, in general, have a pretty bad reputation. It has to be admitted. Part of this is probably just the ingrained human fear of anything nocturnal, any creature of the night. But we can also probably blame Dracula and, in Western society at least, the winged demons of hell from Dante's Inferno. That's by the by. In Australia too, of course, farmers don't like them because when their natural food is in short supply, they will raid orchards, just to try and survive, and who could blame them for that? What we tend to find, though, is when any group, human or animal, is vilified like this, it usually comes down entirely to just a lack of understanding. I'd suggest that's definitely the case with flying foxes. People know very little about them. So today, I'd like to tell you a bit about our flying foxes, why they're so important, why you should care about them, and why we should actually treat them as environmental superstars. Now, everyone knows a few things about bats. They're blind, they use radar, they get caught in your hair, they carry disease. No bat's blind. Flying foxes, in fact, have better eyesight than we do. The blind as a bat probably comes from the little insect-eating microbats who use radar, or echolocation is its correct term, to hunt insects rather than using vision. Flying foxes don't use echolocation. They don't need to. They're vegetarian. They hunt trees. Last time I looked, trees don't run around that much. Bats don't get caught in your hair. I wish they did. I'm a bat researcher. If bats got caught in your hair, I could get a couple of long-haired volunteers, stick them out in the bush, and then just pull bats out of their hair. It doesn't work like that. It's true that bats, like every animal on the planet, including humans, can carry diseases. This is a problem that's been hugely overstated, probably because of bats' reputation. Bat-borne diseases are only responsible for a tiny number of illnesses and deaths in Australia. Far less, for instance, way less than other more deadly animals like snakes, dogs, cats, horses, which is actually statistically the deadliest animal in Australia. If we can overcome some of our prejudices, some of our natural prejudices against bats, we might find that flying foxes are both more important, more interesting and more like you and I than you might have imagined. Now, of course, we know flying foxes go to work at night. So during the day, they just hang around, sleeping, looking after their personal hygiene and appearance, which is very important to a flying fox, or socialising. It's the socialising that causes a lot of trouble with their human neighbours. Flying foxes, just like us, when they get in a group, they like to talk. Their voice and their hearing is in pretty much the same range as ours. So that means we have this very anthropomorphic idea that they're noisy. However, they also like to hang around together, at times up to tens of thousands. And when tens of thousands of bats all talk together, it gets pretty noisy. This is the sound of 25,000 flying foxes on a nice summer's day, all chattering together. Now to you, that just sounds probably like this meaningless cacophony of noise. I'd ask you to consider this. So the pitch is a bit different, but familiarity with human conversation tells us that if we actually move in closer to a group of people like that, it will resolve to individual conversations. Exactly the same thing happens with flying fox conversations. Flying foxes have this incredible vocal repertoire, at least 40 or 50 distinct sounds which they add together to make up individual communications. If we just take some examples, I'd like to show you. Let's say two bats having a bit of a disagreement. We can start off with a very short little communication that effectively means no. We can add to that a bit more, add a little bit more emphasis to it. This one seems to mean go away or leave me alone. And if we go one step further, when you get really angry with another bat, you produce this. And I'm not going to try and translate that for you. But of course, there's more than just arguing with each other. One of the really important parts of a bat's social life, exactly the same as ours, is attracting a mate. Mating season for flying foxes is March, April. During that time, the boys in particular get incredibly insistent. You may wonder just how a flying fox goes about attracting a mate. It's quite easy. The male sees a likely girl, sort of waltzes up to her on a branch, swaying from side to side to show how good he is, leans towards her and screams in her face. He'll go on for up to a minute, and he's telling everyone, not just the girl, but everyone around, how big he is, how strong he is, how important he is. You really want to mate with me, baby. You might not think that's romantic, but I'd suggest to you that's actually no different to what happens in most bars and nightclubs on Friday night. Of course, though, at night they go to work. Just after dusk, the flying fox camp empties as all the bats stream out into the surrounding countryside in search of food. They'll fly 50 kilometres a night searching for food, but they'd much prefer to find something close and convenient. It's the feeding at night that most people's exposure to flying foxes is, rather than actually seeing. It's just hearing them in the trees. And you'll probably recognise some of those sounds from before. Although they're called fruit bats, their main food is actually nectar. They lick the nectar out of native trees, particularly gum trees, And they're actually the main pollinator for most of the hardwood eucalypts on the east coast of Australia. So effectively, no flying foxes, no gum trees. They also eat fruits, things like native figs, lily-pillies, quandongs. And they spread the seeds of them. And by the morning, they're back in the camp doing what bats do during the day. If you're a parent, you'd know full well that juggling parental care and work can be very difficult. No different for flying foxes. They're placental mammals like us, so they don't have the marsupial's nice, neat pouch. So for the first month of the pup's life, the pup hangs on to mum when she flies out. As the pup gets a little older, mum leaves it in the camp overnight. The youngsters play with each other, learn to fly by crashing around amongst the trees. Mum comes back in the morning and tries to find the youngster. She circles the camp, calling to it. They can recognise each other's voices, so the mother and pup call back and forth to each other. The mum then picks up the pup, makes sure it's clean. By 4 or 5 months old, the young ones are flying out of the camp with the adults. By 6 or 7 months old, they're largely independent, although like human teenagers, they've still got a lot of learning to do. Even at that age, though, they're fulfilling that incredibly important role of pollinating and seed dispersal, a role we couldn't do ourselves. In China, excessive use of pesticides has led to some pollinators being eliminated. The end result is people with little pots of pollen and a paintbrush go around pollinating crops. If we lose our flying foxes, would you want to do that for all the gum trees in eastern Australia? Or would you prefer flying foxes did it for us for free? You're probably aware of the Koala Foundation slogan that relates forests and koalas. It's no tree, no me. For our flying foxes, we can easily turn that around. No me, no tree. Today isn't just the day of TEDxCanberra and the federal election. 7th of September is National Threatened Species Day. It's the day that commemorates, if that's the right word, the day in 1936 when the last known Tasmanian tiger died in Beaumaris Zoo in Hobart. Australia has an absolutely abysmal record with species extinctions, especially mammals. The last mammal that we know went to extinct was very recent, on the 26th of August 2009. Probably because the Christmas Island pipistrelle was just a tiny little bat that lived on a remote island, I think that only a handful of ecologists were even aware of its passing. We're privileged to share this country with some absolutely amazing wildlife, really amazing wildlife. We don't really want more of it to end up just as a memory, a faded photo, and a regret. I'd like to finish with a word from this lady. Australia's flying foxes, unasked and unthanked, every night are working to preserve our forests and our environment. It's an environment we all depend on, not just the flying foxes, not just the koalas, but you and I as well. I'd like you to ask yourself, what are you doing to help them? Thank you.